In today's episode, we have a very special guest. Dr. Shayan did his dental education in Iran at Zanjan University. He graduated in 2017 and after working in Iran for 4 years as a general dentist, decided to move to Canada and then to the US. In today's episode, we're going to talk to him about his journey, what were the points that made him make the decisions that he did, and learn a little bit more about him. Welcome to the Global Dentist, the show that opens doors for international dentists looking to transition to North America. This is Sadaf, and I'm here with my co host, Rata.
Join us as we explore unique challenges, inspiring stories, and practical advice from dentists who have successfully navigated their journey from practicing overseas to establishing their careers in the United States and Canada.
People who might not be familiar with what is the express entry, would you mind giving us a little bit of explanation, like what is the route, who can apply?
Yeah, sure. So Express Entry is one of the programs that Canada offers for immigration. They have many programs, but that's one of them. I think it's the fastest and most efficient way if you are holding an advanced degree and have work experience. It's like a pool. Everyone can apply to it, and it's free. You don't have to pay anything to enter the Express Entry pool. So nationalities from all over the world apply. They just say, hey, I have a bachelor degree, I have a master degree, I have a doctorate, whatever. This is how many years I have non-Canadian work experience. This is how many years of Canadian work experience I have. So it has clear categories and definitions that you just create your profile. This is my language proficiency. These are the scores I got in IELTS. I'm single, I have kids, I'm married, whatever. And then based on your profile, it gives you a score. Um, and when I applied, every 2 weeks there was draw happening. But this draw is not like a randomized draw. It's a weighted draw based on the score you get. So they start, picking. They say, oh, okay, this round we're going to invite 2,000 people to immigrate to Canada. They're going to start from the highest scores until they reach their cutoff. Um, so that's the way so every 2 weeks or every month something like that is happening. And even the different provinces, they have their own different draw system which you're going to pick from the same pool. So you're going to be targeted by different programs from provinces, from federal immigration, everything, and everyone has access to your profile, and they're just going to go see your profile and pick you or not. um, but they publish these minimum scores. Like they're like, oh, the last person who was invited in this round had a score of 452, 471, whatever. So like, hey, if I get a score above that, I have a high chance of getting invited. Um, Sorry about that. And then yeah.
So, what are the things that could improve your score? Like, if someone is thinking about applying to express entry, how could they improve their score?
Depends on every person's scenario. It's a case by case, but usually the higher score you get in your English language test, commonly people take IELTS, um, the better score you're going to get. Minimum, if you get a minimum of 7 in each discipline, that's reading, writing, listening, and what did I miss? Speaking. Um, if you get a 7 in each of them, it will give you like a bonus score. So, but if you don't, if you even get 999 and then one discipline you get a 6.5, you will miss that bonus score. And that's something I was looking for into making it to the cutoff. Um, but surprisingly, let's say there's something people will think, oh, if you're married, that's a bonus. But for Canada Express Entry, being married is actually a negative point. So if you're a single person, you will get more score because apparently they think you will get adapted faster and easier to the new community. Um, and your age, which is against you. So like, but by 30, you have the max point you can get from your age. But aging from 30 above, I think for every year or every, I don't know, 2 years or 3 years or something, points will be deducted as you get older. So, but something that people are looking into these days, I'm hearing, because Canadian work experience and Canadian degree from a university here has bonus points. So people, some of the students, hey, be like, oh, hey, so I'm not reaching the cutoff, so I'm not going to be able to make it to get my PR through Express Entry. What I'll do, I apply to a Canadian school. I'll go there on a study permit, and then once I graduate and get my Canadian degree, I will reapply. And that's when I get a bonus score. So that's why you see most of the students come here to Canada, they get a degree, they have now Canadian degree or Canadian work experience, they put it in that express entry system, and now they will get a bonus and they can get their PR. So that's the way it works.
Interesting. And is there a cutoff point for age? Like they say, okay, if you're like 45 and above, you're not even eligible to apply.
So that will be no, that will be a discrimination, and Canada, for Canada immigration, that's impossible. Like for them to say such a thing, like oh hey, if you're aged above like something, we're not gonna let you in. So based on the laws that control most of the things here, and that's discrimination, they cannot say that, but they implement it in a way that hey, if you're above a certain age, we're going to deduct points. So you better be really good in other areas so the age would not go against you.
And one more question before we move on from the express entry topic is, let's say a student moves to Canada with a study permit. How easy is for them to find a job afterwards and get that Canadian work experience?
That is a good question. I'm my answer might not be very reliable, because I never looked into it myself. Um, because I came directly with PR, but I had friends who came with a study permit to UBC, and then they transferred it. I think Canada has also something like a work permit or something like that. Like the US gives like an OPT after the student visas. Um, but I don't know exactly how the Canadian system is. But like as an example, I know like for Iranians, as an example, right now, Canada issues open work permits. Um, so so I know that they apply for something like a work permit, and then they applied for their PR. So it's not like they're gonna kick you out immediately after you finish your studies. Um, but yeah, I don't know exactly how the process is to get that work permit. And I think once you apply for that PR thing after you get a Canadian degree, I think they also give you some kind of a protection to stay legally in Canada while your application is getting processed, something like that. But I'm not sure. I might not be, and my answers might not be very reliable. Sorry.
Thank you. That was really good because actually we have many people listening to us and they're constantly asking about Canada. And me and Saraf, we don't know that much about Canada. That's we're so happy that have you. So we've been here till moving to Canada. Could you please tell us more about the process, maybe the exams, the process that you were thinking to move to the US or stay in Canada, how people should be licensed in Canada? Yeah.
So when I actually moved to Canada, I moved to Canada with zero hope on coming to States, because my mom reapplied for me when I aged out, but I knew that that's gonna take forever to they for them to call me back again. Family immigration is a long journey, at least 5 years. So that was my thing. But when you come, different doors open, and then you're like, hey, I actually can do that. I actually can do that. So I actually came to States way sooner than I thought. But but I didn't come with that plan. So I was thinking solely to get my license in Canada, start working, because I knew if I get licensed and work in Canada, they have a reciprocal agreement with states. So I can easily transfer it when the time comes. So I started looking into, Canada has two different paths to get licensed. It's the exam path and it's the schooling path. Um, the exam path, you take three exams. The first one is AFK, and then it's ACJ, if I'm correct. They always change the names. And the last one is NDEC or something, which is the practical portion. And when you do all three and pass, then you're eligible to take the OSCE, which the graduates of dental schools here take it to get licensed in Canada. So technically, it's four exams. Um, so I was like, okay, let's try that. And I also was like thinking about the schooling path as well a bit. And oh, I missed this part actually. Since I was thinking I would go to States before, um, I actually in 2019 I had a trip like as a visitor to Canada, and I took my MBDE Part 1 at that time in Toronto. I was thinking, oh, hey, let's just do the Part 1 for now, and then I'll do the Part 2 later. So I already took Part 1, and I knew that it's going to be discontinued soon, and the IMBDE is going to replace it, everything. So at that time, I started studying for MBDE Part 2 because I didn't want to do an IMBDE. I just wanted to do Part 2 and get it over with. Because Part 2 is much easier than going back to the basic physiology, biological sciences. Um, so I was studying for MBDE Part 2 and AFK at the same time. But gradually when asking from people and from my classmates at UBC, and I got to know different people, and I studied for it, and I realized, hey, um, if you actually go through the exam path in Canada, at the end of the day, they'll just give you a certificate. Like, hey, this guy passed the exams, which that certificate you can use to get license in Canada, but you cannot work with that in USA. So at the end of the day, if I went through the exam path, it's only good for Canada. And I heard recently that Australia or New Zealand or somewhere like that accepts that certificate too. But USA, I know for sure they don't accept it. So if you're looking into coming to States, Canadian exam path is not the one for you. And I took the AFK. They changed the pattern of the exam. I was the first round after that change. They reduced the number of the questions to 200, I think. So it was only 200 questions, but 4 hours. And believe me, that was the hardest exam I've ever took in my whole life. I couldn't find a seat in Vancouver, in Alberta. The registering process for it was a shit show. Shit show, I mean it. Like this website crashed like many times when I was trying to open it to just register, and by the time it actually responded, it was like all the seats were full. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, what the hell? Is this a third world country? Am I in Iran still? Why is like the Iranian system works better than this? What the hell? So, so I could manage to find a seat in Ottawa, and I had to pay a $600 ticket to just fly to Ottawa to take that shitty exam. And I remember it was in February. We were freezing cold in Ottawa. And when I went to the exam center because they recommended to go, hey, 30 minutes prior to the exam. And when we went there, they were not ready for us. Like the exam was going to start at 9. I went there 8:30 and they were not ready for us. So they were like, oh, due to security reasons, we can't let you into the building until we're ready and like blah, blah, blah. And they kept us in the fucking cold, like minus 25 degrees out for almost 40 minutes. I was freezing to death and cursing them. I was like, are you? I was so pissed. So when I went in, I couldn't, like, my fingers were frozen. I couldn't even, like, that was insane. So I was pissed to begin with that exam. But anyway, I I used all the 4 hours on that 200 questions. Um, I barely had time to come back and recheck a question. So for the last 5 questions, I just randomly selected, like I was getting out of time. The questions were so confusing that out of the 4 or 5 options, 3 sounded super correct to me. And I was like, which one should I go with? And then you keep thinking and thinking and losing time. So I failed that exam, and I'm going to say it loud, and I'm proud that I failed it. Some failures in life will actually make you go for a better path. So shout out to all the failures. I failed that exam. I think with a 68 or 69, something like that. And I think the passing score is around 75, I think, or 70. I don't remember. So I felt it almost there, but and then I was a bit disappointed again. And my friends were telling me, "Hey, you didn't study enough for it." I was like, "Hey, I studied for it for around 4 months," and they're like, "No, that was not enough." And I was like, "You know what? Whatever." Um, and I took the MBDE, the American Part Two, shortly after that. Like when I say shortly, it's like around a month after that. So I took the AFK in February, I took the part two in March, and I passed it. And then I took the ADAT, the Advanced Dental or American Advanced, I don't know what does this stand for. Something dentally advanced exam. But I took the ADAT 2 weeks after part two. So I was just like registering for all of them all. And not surprisingly, I could manage to get a seat in Vancouver where I live easily just 4 weeks before the exam. So there were many seats available. So I just registered for part two in ADAD, and I took it in Vancouver. I actually scored pretty well in ADAD. I think I scored 540, which is not a bad score. It's not perfect if you want to specialize. They'll say aim for above 600, because if you score above 600, that's a guarantee you get into any residency program. But if you score above 500, that's perfect as well. So I scored 540, and I was like, and then my friends were surprised. Hey, he actually did good on ADAT but failed AFK. I was like, well, maybe the problem is the AFK and not me. So I heard that the Canadian exams are getting much better, more standard, and the passing rate has increased a bit, but still at the end of the day you just get a certificate which is valid in Canada. So I think still not worth doing. But if you do the ADAT for Canada and then apply to the 2-year schooling path, you get a degree which is valid in states. So that's what I always recommend for anyone. I'm like, hey, I'm not saying don't do the exam path, just move everything forward at the same time, exam and school path, so that you wouldn't miss your chance. Because I feel whatever you get into first, just go for that. If you got into residency first, go for that. Or if you got into the ITDP international program, whatever, advanced standing, go for that. Because if you don't, you're going to lose one more year of your life in this process. So time is money, or is important here.
Absolutely. And I think for people who don't know, one of the biggest differences between the exams in Canada in general and the US is that in the US you can take the IMBD any time of the year that you want, versus in Canada, I think the AFK is only a few times a year. Am I correct? Two times.
Two times, 2 times a year. I think February, and the other one is in August. I think August. And if you fail AFK 3 times, you're done. You can't take it anymore. You cannot take the exam path anymore. You have to go to school.
I've heard from so many people that it's such a unrealistically hard exam to go.
Let me give you an example. You know how they say, like, when you, I don't know, do a class 2 prep, you need to have, like, I don't know, zero point 0.5 millimeter clearance from the contact in to the next tooth on the gingival floor. So that's what we know, right? And then they ask, like, oh, what is the clearance like we need on the gingival floor on a class 2 prep? And the answer choices are 0.51, 0.52, 0.53, 0.54. So you know that it's zero point 0.5, but then you're like, okay, what the hell? Like, why does it matter between 0.51 and 0.53? And all of them sound correct to you. So you're like, which one should I go for? And I don't know where do they get that from. Probably in one of the textbooks or references they recommend for some one of them in a footnote somewhere in that textbook is like zero point 0.5 whatever 3. And then they're just gonna write it. So the questions you read at AFK are like that, and they're not even standard, like to say, exams when they're written in a way that they're like easy, easy, hard, easy, easy, hard, like they have a pattern. But for AFK the questions are like hard, 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 and then randomly one easy from here and there. But yeah, so that's what you deal with in AFK.
The other thing is that you mentioned the university pathway, in, if for people who want to also be able to practice in the US. From what I have heard from my friends who studied in Canada or wanted to immigrate to Canada, you have to get a 90% or above on your AFK to even technically be eligible to apply to those schools. Because I think there's only five.
That is correct. There are not so many schools. That's so. Don't get me wrong. I am I take pride in being a Canadian. Like I love being a Canadian. I love so many things about Canada, but if I want to look at it realistically, opportunity wise, there are not so many opportunities in Canada, at least for dentists. There are only 5 schools or 6 schools that take the advanced standing. Amongst them, University of Toronto takes the maximum applicants, that's 20. McGill takes like 3 or 4, depending. It varies each year. And I think 3/4 is now reserved for residents of Quebec. So if you're not a resident of Quebec, you literally have no chance. Um, and then there's, I don't know, well, UBC discontinued the program 4 or 5 years ago just because the faculty they're not happy with each other and they have internal fights, whatever, I don't know. But they discontinued the program because originally it was 2 year program. Then they were like, oh, let's make it a 3 year program. And then they were like, oh no, you know what? The international dentists, let's make them do all 4 years from the beginning. And so they discontinued the program. And then there are a couple like in Alberta, maybe I forgot the name of the schools, but Dalhousie and things like that, they only take 3, 4, 5 applicants, very low. So yeah, it's super competitive. Um, and AFK is unreal, like a very poor way of scaling these applicants. So now they all changed it. At my year, only University of Toronto and McGill changed, and they were like, "Oh, AFK is not a standard exam. We don't accept it anymore. If you want to go to the school path, take ADAT." So they were like, even for the international programs, they were like, if you want to get in, you have to do ADAT. And at that time, it was only McGill and Toronto, but I heard that now all of the schools are now using ADAT because they don't want AFK anymore. So, which is a good thing. At least the schools realize, hey, this is a shitty exam. Let's not take it into consideration. And yeah, that's pretty much the path.
So still, if someone is thinking about going down the certificate path, they need to take the AFK. But if they want to go to school, then they need to take ADAT.
ADAT, correct, correct. That's how it is with Canada right now. Yeah,
Expensive schools too.
yeah. Mhm. I did apply to. I think I applied to 5 schools on Capid on states. Um, just as like I want to apply and see how it goes, because I wasn't sure if I can afford paying the high tuitions of the ITDP programs or advanced standings in states, and that's the downside about the U.S. programs. They're super expensive, and not every Canadian can afford it. Especially because here, like, there are, so we don't, like, Canada doesn't have that strong student aid that US and the FAFSA program has. Um, the student aid is very poor. Um, so they don't cover all of your tuition or everything. Instead, the private banks like RBC, Scotiabank, and TD, they have these good line of credits around 300 to $400,000 that if you get into a dental school, they will just give you access to that line of credit and you can use that. And everyone in Canada uses the line of credit to pay for their tuition and cost of living. But the thing is, they give you that line of credit for Canadian schools, but if you want to go to a US school, you need to have a Canadian cosigner. So, but if you go to a Canadian school, you do not need a cosigner. So that's the difference. And I was like, okay, I'm not sure if I can get a cosigner or apply and get approved. So I just applied to 5 US schools through Capit, and then I applied to University of Toronto as well for the advanced standing. And I didn't apply to McGill because simply the numbers were super low that they were going to take. And also they require you. I was enrolled in a master program at UBC, right? So on their website, apparently this happened to them a lot before. So McGill exactly have written on their website that if you're currently enrolled in a master program and if you want to get into our ITDP or advanced standing program, you need to be finished with your defense by November. And you need to show us proof that you have defended. Because if you don't, we're gonna simply, you're gonna lose your place, even if we have selected you. And working on my master's, I was done by October, but you're not done until your supervisor says you're done. And I wasn't having a very good relation with my supervisor at that time. So I was like, I'm not sure if she'll let me go. Um, so I simply was like, okay, this is not going to work for me. So I only applied for U of T, and the other schools all required AFK in Canada, which I failed. So I only applied literally to U of T. I got an invitation to be interviewed for U of T. Surprisingly, I wasn't expecting that, but I got invited. And I got an invitation for University of Michigan. I applied in US for Buffalo, for NYU, Michigan, and Southern California, and that was four. Where else did I apply? Boston. I applied to Boston. I know. I was just like, you know what I was looking at the numbers. So I was like, oh, Boston takes 100 applicants. NYU takes a lot of applicants. Let's apply because I have higher chances. But then Michigan, the only reason I chose at that time was simply because they were like, oh, if you have took ADAT, we will prioritize you. And I was like, hey, I already took ADAT for Toronto, so I'm going to apply to Michigan. They're going to prioritize me. So I that's the reason I applied. But so and none of the US schools even gave me an interview. None. Only Michigan did. And I actually got a US B1, B2 visa. I visited my family in Arizona in July and I came back. And I think 2 days after I came back to Vancouver, I got an invitation for interview by Michigan. And I was like, holy shit, why? Because, um, um, Iranians, like, we only get a single entry visa. And I was like, shit, now I have to apply for a new visa. But the US embassy was super helpful there with me too, because now the wait lines for B1, B2 visas are like, I don't know, a year, 2 years. It's crazy. So I applied and I got an interview date in a year and a half. And then I wrote a request at an expedite. I was like, hey guys, this is a lifetime opportunity. I need to go for my interview and bench exam. And the next day they approved my expedite. So I went there and I easily got my visa and I came for the bench exam. And then after a while, I came back, and in 2 weeks or so, I got an email that I got accepted. So I shouted. I remember I just finished my last. I was working in the lab on a bacteria CFU test, and I finished my last like batch of cells, and that was the last actually lab portion I had to do for my thesis. And then I closed the biosafety cabinet, and I was seeing notifications from my friends like, "Hey, dude, what's up?" Like those were the people who were interviewed in Michigan with me. So I was like, "Oh, hey, why is this guy asking me how are you doing? Maybe the results have came out." So I just checked my email, and I was like, "Shit, I got it." So I that was a very happy day for me. And so but then I went for Toronto, already aware that I got accepted to Michigan. So I was super relaxed, because I knew I have my seat. Um, but maybe that's why, naturally I didn't make an effort because I always wanted to go to a US school. Um, because I think I did well at my interview in Toronto, but they didn't offer me a seat. Um, but maybe I didn't put in enough effort naturally. I don't know. So that was my path, and then I got my F1, and I came to Michigan, and it wasn't until they invited me for interview that I realized, hey, University of Michigan is actually the number one dental school in the world. So I wasn't aware of that until the interview. I was like, holy shit. So people believe in yourself. Although I failed AFK, that doesn't mean you're not good. It simply means that place is not for you. Maybe something bigger is waiting for you.
Exactly. That's super important. Like all of us have our failures, right? You can never win every fight. Like that's not how life works in general. You just have to take your wins, take your failures, and see what you can do with them.
Exactly. Yeah, I 100% agree.
And Shayan, tell us a little bit more about your experience with your interview at Michigan. How was it? How was the bench test? How is the school in general if someone is thinking about applying to Michigan this year?
Um, Honestly, like so I did interviews for the residencies in Canada for endodontics, periodontics. Um, those were like a lot more complicated. Like I really liked the interview process in Michigan because it was super chill. Like there were people who were stressed. I don't know, but at the bench exam, I was super relaxed. Um, there was literally no interview. It was a 2-day process. The first day, they just do a presentation, orientation, school tour, and then you introduce yourself to everyone, to the audience, to the program director, whatever. Um, and they're for Michigan, they invite 60 people for interview. At least that's how it was. I don't know how they're running right now. Usually there are around 800 applications, and then they select 60 people for interview in two batches. So 30 batch one, 30 batch two. And then, so you only get to see half of the batch. And you just introduce yourself. That's the first day. And then second day, it's just a half a day. Like, I think they give you 3 hours or 4 hours from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then you just do the bench exam on a head mannequin in a dental form, and then you deliver that with a code. So they blind it. They don't know. They like. I really like the fact that they like it to be a fair process, and they blind everything, like so that the graders would not know what is the name of this guy that I'm grading. They blind everything to make it fair. Um, and it was super chill. The program director at the so they asked us to do, I think, a class two. I'm not sure even if I'm allowed to expose that, but let's not do that. I'm still in this school. Yeah, a bench test. Yeah. um I'm just saying that it was super chill, and we did like a couple of simple preps, crown prep, I don't know, like restorative prep and an amalgam filling or something. And yeah, and even I remember the program director told us, hey, like if you like didn't do it well or ruined it or whatever, I will give you another tooth to retry. Just give me your best work. Just show me your best work. Like, I don't care if you ruin it, if you fail or whatever. We all fail. We all make mistakes. I'm not going to judge you on that. Just give me your best work. I'll give you another tooth. You have 4 hours. And I loved that. Like, when he said it, I was like, wow. Like, this guy is a human, it's not a robot. Um, so that really made me chill. Even I remember the guy sitting next to me because I was listening to music and just doing my preps, and then I gave it. The guy next to me was like, "Dude, like you were so chill on your exam, you pissed me off." I was like, "Seriously? Like me being chill next to you piss you off?" He was like, "Yeah." Um, but anyway, it was a very nice interview, chill. I loved it, and I love the city Ann Arbor, very nice college town. Um, so I was really hoping, and I could imagine myself studying in that city and school. So when I got in, I was super happy. Yeah, yeah. And the journey so far, if I want to say, UMich, I'm gonna tell you, it's not an easy program. I mean, it's the number one school. They make you work. The the requirements are high, but they're doable. If you're an organized person, if you're on top of it, you can definitely do all of it. And some people say, oh, the advanced standing or international programs are a waste of time. I 100% disagree right now. I thought when I started it, I was a bit sad that hey, I'm wasting 2 years of my life again to get relicensed or whatever. But I learned a lot, like a lot. And my school in Iran like taught me very well, don't get me wrong, but well, no program is perfect. I'm just gonna say that. Every program has its deficiencies. Like in Iran, like I didn't learn how to do perfectly the dentures, the removables, or the pros was not strong in my school. The resto super strong, endo super strong, but pros no. And I feel at Michigan they have a really strong pros portion, like, and the faculty super nice and humble. Like I love it, like the fact that they put the time and they actually teach you step by step and you understand everything. um I would say that my hands-on skills improved significantly. I don't want to brag, I will just call myself a super dentist from this point because like I feel I mastered most of the things and I just filled in the gaps that I had from my past education.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask some question about your CV. Like during the interviews that you had, do you think there was something that like program directors or people who were interviewing you really liked it about, or maybe something that was in your CV and you think that actually helped you? Like I don't know. And also, I wanted to ask about your bench test. How you got ready for your bench test? Did you get any courses or something, or just you practice by yourself? Because I know you have that 4 years experience in Iran, but yeah.
Yeah. I actually, well, experience working experience highly helps in terms of your speed, but working on a natural tooth is super different than working on a plastic tooth. Um, One of my friends in Vancouver like gave me a plastic tooth to just try because he was practicing for that exam, Canadian exam path, the practical one. And I actually just jumped in one day as like a guest, like to try to see how I do. Like he told me to keep that tooth um, for myself, but I throw it away because it was awful. But he told me to keep it as a reminder to myself. Because after 4 years of practicing, I tried to do a class 2 or something on that plastic tooth. Oh my God, it looked horrible. It was bad. So it's very different. I definitely recommend practicing for it. But what I did is that from the time I got the interview to the actual bench exam, I didn't have too much time. It was like 2 months or 3 months. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna give it my best. Um, I paid a private institution that my friend was going there. I was like, hey, I cannot afford taking courses, but I need like teeth and instruments to practice. So if I pay you, will you be willing to do this? And she agreed. She was like, hey, you know what? Just if you pay me just for the material, I think they charged me around less than 2,000 Canadian dollars for like 6 or 7 4-hour sessions. And I had school and my master's, and I was working part time. I think I was working at a grocery store at that time as cashier. But so I had a lot of shit on my plate as well. So I went there and practiced for 6 or 7 4-hour sessions, and I watched the Stevenson videos on YouTube, and and it was like an hour by bus from where I lived at UBC to that center. So on the bus, I was always watching those YouTube videos, and then went there and I practice, and then I took pictures and shared with my friends. So I would say that a huge part of my success were my friends who helped me a lot. Um, and one of them is a dentist. I'm not going to name them because I'm not sure if they're comfortable to be named, but one of them was a licensed dentist in Vancouver who studied in NYU. One of them runs his own, page on dentistry in states in Canada and things like that. Um, and he also helped me instead of like in giving me feedbacks. I was taking pictures of my preps and sending it to them, and I was asking them, hey, please give me feedback. Is it good? What do you think I can do better? And they were critical, like super critical on it, and I was like, appreciate it, because I want to know what can I do to make it better. um, so yeah, they helped me a lot in this matter. That's the only thing I did, and my work improved huge, like significantly. Like it's because you have the skills. You have been working on natural teeth. You just need to adapt it to plastic tooth and how to do. And and I would say even if you're perfect on working on a plastic tooth in your preps or everything, it highly also depends on your mood, if you're having a good day or a bad day. Because I was doing super good on my third practice session, and then on my fourth or fifth, I was again very super shitty. So I was like, hey, I realized it highly matters if I am calm and relaxed. So that's what I tried to be at my bench test. I was like, hey, Shayan, if you want to do good, you have to be relaxed and super chill. So, and I think that also helped me a lot. On how I did.
And since you've moved to the US, what do you think are the differences between the opportunities that are available in the US for dentists versus in Canada?
Honestly, when I moved to the States, I got shocked, like by the level of opportunity, support, and resources that are available here. Like, not even comparing it to Iran, comparing it just to UBC in Canada. When I saw the level of resources, like I was super shocked. Um, like every week, I would say we have a lunch and learn or something, even sometimes couple of days a week, from different companies, DSOs, and areas. They just come to just advertise, they pay for your lunch, they present their company. Hey, come work for us when you graduate. Like, this is the states we offer, these are the offices, these are our benefits, and they compete with each other. Like, some of them are like, hey, we give you 50,000 bonus, we give you 100,000 bonus. Like, And I was like, holy shit, like these people, like they're really competing with each other, like into getting us to work for them. And then even some of them invite you for socials after school for dinners. And like, I was like shocked. Oh my gosh. Like, in Vancouver, at least, there's only one DSO that just recently began to be established, and I'm not going to name it again. And they co-partner even with UBC to build their sim lab. Um, that's the only DSO, and it just arrived to Canada, at least BC. And the level of competition and opportunity here, it's extreme, it's wild, like, and I loved it. I was like, hey, this is where I want to be. This is where, like, I realized this is the country, and I this is what I love about US. As much as it is, I don't know, let's say there are many differences between Canada and States. Like, Canada's peaceful, people are all nice, whatever. In US, people are a bit more aggressive, they are racist to some level, yes, but the opportunity level here is insane. And if you, this is the country, and by this country I mean states, if you work for something, you will get it. And that's what I love about it, because what I have been pissed my whole life in Iran starting was that I was working hard and not getting what I want, or even in a discriminatory way, if I pronounce correctly. Like, opportunities are given to people who didn't work for it, or in an unfair way. And then you come to Canada, the fairness is there to some level, but the opportunity is not there. So it's like, again, you work hard, but you might not get it because simply the opportunities are limited. Um, so I got, again, was like, hey, how many years do I have to work in Canada to get this or get that, or to develop professionally, personally, or in my career? Like, I realized, okay, I get here and then that's it. But in States, you can get much higher. Like, there's no end to it. You can always go further. And that's what it excites me and motivated me. And I was like, okay, this is the country I want to be in. Now, people have different goals. Like, some people might be like, hey, I just want to have a peaceful life. I'm good with earning 150K a year. I just want to have a peaceful life. Canada is definitely the country for you. My personality type is like, I just want to go higher. I just don't want to stop at a level, because then I will feel dead. That's me. So it really matters on what you want from your own life. But yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, so now you're kind of the second year in your program. Do you have any future plans, or maybe like moving to the US and being in the university that you're in Michigan has changed your plans that if you were in Canada, you didn't want to do them?
Um, well, yeah. Well, when I started the ITDP program at Michigan, I was like, guys, I'm done with schooling. This is the last program I'm gonna do. Um, that's it. I just want to get out, start working, making money. But the environment at UMich, the competition between the students for grades, and everyone's like applying for residency and thinking and talking about it, it was just so strong that I was like, I feel if I don't go for a residency, I'm just falling behind, or I'm missing something. I did. That's the way I felt. And I was like, Shayan, don't fall into the trap. Like, these guys are kids. Like, you're more than that. Like, you have realized the reality of life. Just go for general practice. That's it. So you hear different things from here and there. But at the end of the day, what matters is what you want, like, for yourself. And that's what motivated me to apply for residency, because I imagined myself in 10 years. I was like, okay, let's say I graduate, you will finish school eventually. You'll go out and then you start working. And then I imagined myself in 10 years, and I was like, do I want to be a GP in 10 years? Like, is that what I will enjoy? Or the future me will regret not doing residency. And then I realized, yes, the future me will definitely regret not doing residency and not putting in the work. Because I know it's easy to just go away and be like, hey, I'm done with schooling. That's the easy way, right? But I'm 100% sure my future me will thank me for applying for residency. And that doesn't mean I got into it yet, but I applied for it. So hopefully I'll get in. And also, it matters what form of, like, what residency you want to do and for what reasons you want to do. Um, because not every residency is will give you what you want. And I thought that I want pediatric dentistry, but once I did the ITDP program in Michigan, I realized, and I talked to a few pediatric dentists, and I realized this is not the life I want. Like, no. And then I went for my other passion, which is endodontics, and it gives me what I want in life for my future. And what was the other question?
Moving, like doing the IDP program at Michigan, change your perspective about what you thought we're planning to do in the future?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And also, I mean, many things still matter. Like I was also thinking in terms of doing residency or not, because affording residency is another story. I was thinking that, and like if I will secure my green card to be able to work and live in states and benefit from the FAFSA and student aid in the states. Um, so I applied for my green card myself through my research and the publications and citations through NIW. It's called National Interest Waiver. Um, I think it's EB2 NIW. It's employment based. And everyone, there is a very famous attorney that mostly, does the work for most of the medical people. Again, I'm not going to name it. I don't know to what level I'm allowed to name people, but if you ask here and there, you will get to know. It's super famous. Um, so I applied through them, and then my case was denied last year. Oh, actually, it got requested for additional evidence. I provided the additional evidence, and then they denied my case. And I thought, hey, you know what? Maybe I don't have enough citations yet. Maybe I don't have enough publications yet. But when the letter came, it was surprising because they approved all of those. They just denied my case based on the fact that the area of research I'm working on is not in the US national interest. And I was like, what? And my research is mostly oral prevention and disease markers. So I was like, are you kidding me? Like, do you know how many public health emergencies have been issued by CDC and the WHO on oral diseases? So that's exactly how my attorney challenged the denial. Um, and they told me, hey, by the way, now you're in Michigan, so if you apply, your case, we also recommend appealing and reapplying because your case will not go to Texas Center, it will go to Nebraska Center. So I reapplied and I also appealed, and both of those got approved in December. The appeal got approved and the new case got approved, and I was like, oh, woo, lovely. Um, so yeah, but I did something funny since I got denied. Um, in May 2023, I got denied. So I was like, hey, if this is actually my green card is not going to work, I don't want to lose my Canadian residency. And I I noticed two or three of my Canadian friends and classmates from the same program in Michigan. They're living in Windsor, Ontario, and they're crossing the border every day to Michigan, coming to school, and then coming back to Canada. That way, they're maintaining their physical presence in Canada and they can get their citizenship. So I was like, hey, actually, not that my green card, whatever got denied, maybe that's what should I do because I don't want to lose my Canadian residency because I was living in Ann Arbor. So I broke my lease. I had to pay a lot to just break that lease, but then I did it and I moved to Windsor. I actually rented a car one day just as a trial to cross the border and then come back to States to see how would the U.S. border officers treat me, because I had a multiple entry visa, thank God, but at the end of the day, I had an Iranian passport, and being an Iranian citizen, like I was like, okay, I had a fear, extreme fear of crossing the US border every day. Are you kidding me? So I actually did that. And when I was returned back, I looked at Windsor and I was like, hey, it's actually a nice, calm city. But then I even looked at some of the houses like for rental, to options. And then when I returned back to the States, they took me to secondary inspection, and they questioned about my family, my mom, dad, what do they do? They were like, oh, write everyone of your family members' date of birth, even your aunt and uncles, and blah blah blah. So they kept me there for like an hour or something, and then they were like, oh, you're good, like you can go. And then I was like, guys, I'm looking into moving into Windsor and cross the border every day. So if you're gonna do this to me every day, this is simply not gonna work. Just tell me so I would abort this moving process right away. But then the officer told me like there, oh, you know what? I'm actually gonna put a note on the system that I checked you, you're good, so they wouldn't bother you next time you cross the border. I was like, oh wow, good, thank you. So I did the move in July, and since July 2023, I'm crossing the border every day to Michigan. And it's not that far, actually. It's just 45-minute drive from my home to my school. So, and in the beginning, for the first couple of months, I still had a fear, but now it's super smooth. I just go cross the border in less than 20 seconds. They're like, oh, going to school? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, have a good day. Sometimes they don't even ask for my passport or documents. Somehow they, I don't know, recognize from my car or whatever. I show up at the border and they're like, good morning, Mr. Darvish. And I'm like, holy shit, these guys have information. So that's what I did, and by the end of my program, um, in around 11 months, I will get. By the time I graduate from Michigan, I also can get my Canadian citizenship. So it's a win-win. Um, and but again, I didn't know that my green card is going to be approved. So, and I mean, the NIW got approved eventually in December, but since I'm exiting states every day and I'm living in Canada, I can't file for adjustment of status, because if you file for that, you have to stay in states. So now I have to go through the IVP process. I have to go to the US Embassy in Montreal, get processed for immigrant visa, and come back. And and in my case is interview ready. They just told me they have COVID backlogs, and I have to wait around a year, hopefully sooner, earlier, to go there to get processed. But again, what my point is, like, you never know what's coming at you in the future. The good thing is to have everything ready in a safe position, right? Um, if I got my approval back in May 2023, I probably would have not moved to Windsor, and I would have lost my Canadian residency. But that failure made me do something to now get my Canadian citizenship and also get my US green card. So again, another failure, but it actually ended up to be a better opportunity for me.
So true. And Cheyenne, regarding your NIW path, I wanted to ask if that's okay for you to disclose. Like, how many publications do you have? How many citations do you have? Who would be a suitable person to apply for NIW? And do you need to be in the US to do that, or can you do that from your own country as well?
Anywhere in the world, I see people doing NIW from Iran. Like, I applied when I was in Canada. You don't need to be in States. Obviously, if you're in States and if you're active in a US school, getting recommendation letters from American faculty, that's highly gonna make a difference for your case to get approved. But that doesn't say that if you're in Iran or another country, you cannot. You just have to be better or show something else to get approved. Um, I guess in the dental field, as long as you show that you're active in the research field and you have around 5 or 6 publication or something around that, and at least let's say 10, 11 citations, that should be good enough for an AW. Because what I heard from the attorney I worked with, that the average level like of people who like number of citations that dentists have is 6 or 7 or something like that. So if you're above that, that means you're above like around the high 20% or something. And so I think for the first petition I filed, I had around 12 citations or something like that. And then by the time they requested for additional evidence, I reached 17 citations. So I provided more documents, but then eventually they denied. And and when I refiled again, I had around 20 something. Now I have 31. But I mean, it really like don't get disappointed if you don't have enough citation yet, because they will come. If you did a good valid research, you just need to give it some time. Like like I published around 6 or 7 papers in 2 years. Those were all of my works from Iran dental school that I managed to write the manuscripts and then get it published. Publication is a whole journey. Um, when I started working after graduating, and then I published, and I told my supervisor in Iran, "Hey, Dr. Blah, um, like the whole reason I did this was to get citations and maybe get something out of it, and now I have publications but zero citations." And she just told me give it some time. So, and that was so true, because I never realized, hey, I never ever realized that one day I'm gonna reach 31 citations. I mean, that's not compared to the faculty who have hundreds of citations. That's nothing, but for me, I feel 31. It's like an achievement. So you can just Google and search for my Google Scholar. People who are hearing, just Google my name, Shayan Darvish, and then see my publications. I don't have too many. I think I just have 8 or 9 publications and 31 citations. But as long as you show you're active, your field of research is in an area that can benefit states, and if you have a good attorney, and don't be shy in spending money for these things I call investing. So I wanted to get the best attorney, even if it costs $10,000. I'm going to pay for it, because that is called investing for your future. Some things you have to pay, even if you don't have to eat good food for 6 months. I was willing to do so, but invest for my future. So don't be shy in spending in these things. And connections highly highly matter, because the people who gave me recom letters highly made a difference for my case. Like I got recom letters from people in states, from Canada, from Iran. um, so connections really matters as well.
So, for the last question, I know we've been talking for a little over an hour now, and you've given us so many golden nuggets. I'm sure everyone's going to enjoy this episode so much. What would be your advice for international dentists who are just thinking about starting the process, whether of moving to the US or to Canada?
Advice is like is to keep up making an effort and keep up working for it, and never stop believing in your dream. I would say that's my only advice, because you're gonna face failure, you're gonna face hard times for sure, and you're gonna face people who will disappoint you, or who will tell you you can't do that, or you're not good enough. Trust me, you are good enough. You can do it. You just have to believe it yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Shayan, for giving us your time. It was a pleasure. Where can people find out more about you and connect with you?
Yeah, I was happy to be a guest. I'm happy to help and give positive vibes to people who are trying to make a difference for their lives. Go for it. And thank you for having me. If you want to stay connected with me, you can follow me on my Instagram. Shayan Darvish 2. That's my thing. My hashtag is flying dentist. As I said, I wanted to become a pilot someday. Um, but yeah, you can connect me. My account is public. Send me a direct message. If I can get back to you on time, I apologize, but I'll do my best to get back to you. Hopefully, a different platform soon. I'm thinking of doing like some podcasts or things like that in the future, but hopefully soon, because I think Instagram is going out of style, right? Right now the new generation is using what is it, Snapchat or whatever? No. And what is the other one? TikTok? Yeah, TikTok. And I have zero clue on how to use the TikTok or things like that, but I'm trying to learn and change the platforms. But for right now, you can reach out to me, or you can just send me an email. I don't know if you can somehow put my email out there for them to reach, but okay.
Yeah, thank you. It was actually really inspiring for me. I think it would be like as well for people who are listening. Thanks for your time.
Who wants to stay connected with Shayan. As always, thank you everyone for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform so you can stay in touch with us and so we can reach more global dentists out there. Until next time, keep thriving.